Hey there. So, my next guest has built a company using AI in order to track CSGO players and figure out how they can perform better. And it's really cool because he gives us his background, his physics, and he like took his the study and he was able to apply it different ways along his journey through his life. And then he realized he could apply it in the gaming space. So, this is really cool. And I know you all are going to love it. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, I have a very special guest with us. I have Dr. Bill Freeman. Hey there, Bill. How's it going?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Things are going great.
Fantastic. And where do you hail from, Bill?
I'm living in Charlotte, North Carolina right now. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Beautiful. I'm sure you're appreciating the weather right now.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous out. It's like a solid 50 sweater weather, but can't complain.
It's funny you say that. I lived in Ohio for 9 years, and when it got to 50, that was shorts weather.
Right. Yeah. I think we've had snow like one day out of the 2 or so years I've been here.
Certainly. Okay. So, Bill, I like to get the show getting started just right into it. So, why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. So I'm Bill Freeman, the co-founder and CEO of PureSkill.gg, which is an AI-powered CSGO coach. My background is a PhD in physics, which I got from University of California, Riverside. I did my undergrad in physics at Louisiana State University. So after the PhD, I was a data scientist at Lowe's Home Improvement, and then at a remote data science consulting company called Row AI, whose sort of claim to fame is being the AI behind a bunch of NASCAR decisions. So that's super fun to work with.
All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. There's a lot to unpack there. But before we do that, I start every interview with a single question. So I'm going to ask you, just like I ask everybody else. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you, Bill?
7.
And why is that?
Okay, so I saw this question coming, and I just out it with no context during our weekly meeting. I have two other co-founders. I said, "Guys, on a scale from 1 to 10, how weird am I?" And the answer was, "I don't know, but it's definitely +2." After asking that question, they didn't have the context. Yeah, I getting a PhD in physics is pretty weird. Just I don't know. I guess I'm an interesting person, so I think that's maybe a little weird. Yeah, I guess I don't know. It's hard to describe.
Okay.
So maybe I'll give an example. I would say I have the spot the station. They'll send you an email when you can see the International Space Station pass overhead. It just looks like a bright star. So I'll be out at a bar and just like, "Hey, are you guys ready to see the spaceship?" And they're like, "What? Are you ready to go see the spaceship? I guarantee you there's a spaceship coming by later." And they're like, "What?" And then you go, "Yeah, sure enough, there it is." So that's my approach there. So hopefully that maybe explains it.
I asked that question because I think a lot of people in the gaming space inappropriately think of themselves as weird when I'm sure there are thousands, potentially millions of other people just like you who are like, "Ooh, look at the space station." But okay. All right. So this is the Gamerpreneur podcast. So I do need your gaming cred, Bill. When did you first start playing video games?
Ooh, yeah. So that would be the N64 when it first came out with me and my brothers. So yeah, our neighborhood was actually ideal when I was around 10 years old. So we had the N64. The other neighbor had the GameCube, and then another neighbor had like a Dreamcast and like a good PC to play games on. And so that was kind of unusual. So we were playing like Red Alert over there, and then all the neighborhood kids would come over and we'd like try to beat Star Fox together, just like taking turns on the very last sort of boss fight. So started playing those console games, moved to Counter-Strike basically when it first came out, I think 1.3, and then was competitive in Counter-Strike during college. these are the source days. Got up to Cal, Maine, if anybody understands that flex. Then I went off to college. I went off to grad school where I became more competitive in Dota, a little bit of Overwatch, and now I'm back to Counter-Strike.
All right, beautiful. And I'm assuming you still play Counter-Strike since your company's based around it.
Yeah, we call it definitely working hours and then just go play Counter-Strike.
What else do you play, if anything?
So I have been enjoying Spelunky 2 since it came out. I'm awful at it. I'm okay-ish at the original Spelunky, and so I'm trying to get my chops up to take on Spelunky 2. I guess a little bit of that game Crypt of the Necrodancer. That's a lot of fun. I'm playing some chess. Yeah, so
all right,
a
beautiful.
couple of my games.
And then kind of one more gaming related question, then we'll get on to the preneur part. If you had to pick one game as your all-time favorite, which one is it?
All-time favorite. So if I'm just going to think about, does it have to be a single player game?
No,
just
not
any
at all.
game. I mean, maybe it might just be Counter-Strike. I think that game is near perfection, but I think at least the originals, I still need to form an opinion on Spelunky 2, but the original Spelunky is often, listed as one of the best games of all time, even though it's very difficult. It's just so good.
I am going to have to make a note of that one because I have not played a Spelunky yet. Spelunky. Okay.
You like roguelikes?
Yeah, I love roguelikes. Yeah, absolutely. It's in a square now, so I'll pay attention to that. So, Bill, let's talk about the business side of things. So you kind of gave a very brief rundown of your professional background, but could you go into a little more detail? How did you end up where you're at today?
Right. So I graduated from getting the PhD in physics in 2017. And I did search for a couple of physics or astronomy related jobs and just kind of wasn't having much luck. So I said, okay, I'm going to go do a pretty common thing with people who got PhDs in physics, which is go switch to data science. And so when you do that, you sort of need at least a couple of data science-y projects to talk about during interviews. And so I was doing these projects, and they're very standard. It's like, predict a flower based on its characteristics, like what type of flower it is, predict housing prices, predict who survived the Titanic. And I was like, okay, got all these done. I'm bored. And so I decided to take on my own project, and that was looking at Counter-Strike replay data. What's in there? Can there be any fun data science in there? And then it turns out there was a lot. That being able to I had to figure out how to extract the data from Counter-Strike replays and then collect enough to just sort of collect a big enough number of matches and then analyze that and say, oh, okay, there's a lot of data in here. And then also on the side, I was, I played Counter-Strike competitively, but I wasn't really doing that as a team anymore. So I was just sort of helping people get better, just doing demo reviews, watching the replays and saying, oh, there are these really obvious things that I see, having 10 years of experience in the game that are easy to see, easy to fix. Just fix these things. And I realized that you could find those in the data too. And so put two and two together, there's a ton of info in the data. There's a lot of consistent, similar mistakes that players are making. AI coaching.
Very cool. And you did not build this business yourself, correct? You found partners and built it?
That's right. Two co-founders. We all met in grad school. So Evan has a PhD in physics. Ethan has a master's in physics. So those are my two co-founders. Okay. Couldn't have done it without them.
And certainly. And what was it like building this business? Because, physics is a far cry from entrepreneurship.
Right. Yeah. This it's been an interesting journey. I feel like when I started this, that there was such a need for something like this in the community to exist. There was nothing like it. Now there are actually a lot of companies trying to do the same thing. And so it's been interesting seeing that, but I'm still motivated to keep going because I don't see a lot of people doing it quite the way we are, quite right. not optimal way to path to improvement. And so that's been very interesting. Also, just sort of going to these meetings and startup events and seeing, what is it like to pitch to investors. They have this event around here called Pitch Breakfast. Very useful, very very entertaining. It just there's an entrepreneur network around you if you look for it, probably.
Very cool. And how's business going?
Pretty good. We basically launched an early access in September. We have we have just under 1,000 users who have signed up and completely connected their account. And so the way we make money is through a subscription. And so we've gotten about 50 subscribers. And right now so it feels like we've gotten a lot of the technical stuff out of the way. And now it's like, well, how do I market this? How do I actually get this in front of people? How do I convert, from the free tier to the paid tier? And that's the operation right now.
So how does that work? So you have different tiers. You got free and paid. Obviously, I'm just a gamerpreneur. I like to know how you're making your money because this is just so fascinating. You got this AI system that watches you play essentially, and then tells you how to be better. It's like, how do you charge for that?
Right. So we looked at basically a lot of other things that gamers are paying for. And so for Counter-Strike, you can look at ESEA, you can look at Faceit. Those are both $7 to $15 a month. And what they do is provide third-party matchmaking, so like better services, a better report structure, league system, that kind of stuff. You can also look at things like Twitch subscriptions. You can look at how much do skins cost, how much do things cost that gamers are paying for, and so it just made sense to charge for this as a monthly subscription. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. And let's a little bit about you and your role. Your role is CEO.
That's right.
Okay, so what does that mean? What's your day-to-day like then?
I do like everything. So I'm full time on this, and my other co-founders are part time, and so they're handling a lot of the technical sort of legwork. I'm also doing some of that as well, and the way that you build this AI system is you have to build sort of the end-to-end technical part, and then for the AI, you build it up piece by piece, mistake by mistake, and so we've built the sort of infrastructure and working on that, but then for things like accounting, managing contractors, paying contractors, finding contractors, talking to our lawyers, negotiating all of that. So it's just so I'm sort of acting as a catch-all because my time is I spend a lot more time because I can, and yeah, it's working out fine. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And it's interesting because a lot of businesses don't even get off the ground, but you already have paying customers. So what do you think it is that's making you special or unique in the market?
Okay, so I'm realizing this more and more as I talk to people in the startup space, is that the team is one of the most important aspects of what you're trying to build. And so I think that the team has a lot of the technical knowledge to build this efficiently and for lower upfront costs than anybody. So if you were to hire a data scientist, that's $200,000 a year in total, if you consider like all the healthcare and insurance and stuff like that, 401k. And so, as a co-founder who is a data scientist, I can do that for best price I can give you, $30K a year, something like that. It's like ridiculously low options. And then Ethan and Evan are still at their day jobs. And so we've been able to build this up to the point where people are paying for it while bootstrapping ourselves. And that's not something that other companies have done. You could look at like Mobilytics. You could look at Leadify. Mobilytics raised $4 million before they even had a working product, a free or paid version. Leadify raised $1 million earlier this year, and they didn't have a paid tier. Their entire product was free. And they just added some features behind a paywall.
Okay. Okay, that's awesome. You said you entered early access in September, but when did you start this project?
We founded the company May of 2019, so it's been about a year and a half, a little
Okay.
more than that. And then, I mean, it started off as this data project, so maybe 2 or 3 months before that.
Okay, so we'll say, 2 years.
Okay,
Um,
sure.
so if you could go back in time 2 years, and you could talk to Little Bill, and you could tell Little Bill all of the things that are going to happen over the next 2 years. But here's the one thing you need to know. What is that one thing you tell him?
um, I probably would have maintained my day job for longer, just because when I quit, we didn't have a paid product. I should have sort of stayed. Um, Basically, I quit too early, and that puts a lot of strain on my personal finances. Charlotte has a low cost of living, but it's not zero. So I think that was something that I would change about the whole process. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And, as an entrepreneur, been doing this for almost 2 years now, a year and a half, like you said, you've had to have learned some things. If there's somebody in the audience listening to you and they want to maybe go down that route, maybe they've been considering something like this as well. What advice do you have for them to be able to do that?
Um, yeah. So I think a big piece is that you need at least one co-founder. If you can't find somebody to believe in your vision when it's at its earliest state, you're going to have trouble down the road. But it seems like every successful company has at least two people. It's not impossible, but I think that wasn't obvious when I first started off. And then, uh, the other thing is that startup life is hard. Um, Sometimes it's just simply not for everybody. So if you're really like, oh, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't do this, maybe I should. It's like, no, you need to like the way I started this company is like the Counter-Strike community needs this. I am their savior. Kind of was the mentality, but uh but like yeah, like the community desperately needs what I'm making. Nobody's doing it this way. I have to do this.
I love that point. I actually like to say myself that you're either all in or you're looking for a way out.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay,
agree with
Bill,
that.
can we talk about you a little bit more personally if possible?
Sure.
Okay.
Um,
I actually
what do
have
you
a
want
question. When I was a child.
to
So I believe that we learn the most in our lives from our failures rather than necessarily our successes, because it's when you get smashed in the face and knocked down, you have to figure out a way to pull yourself up, dust yourself off, and then move forward. So I'd like to ask you, what do you consider your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
um, I didn't freeze. I was just like, oh, not this question. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like to think about it. Um, one thing I do think about is that every single job application that I sent in and didn't get could have drastically changed how everything went. It's like I applied to manage a telescope in the middle of nowhere, Texas. So like I'm not even sure if they would have had internet there. And so it's like how different would everything have been. So every single application just I think is compounding.
Do you regret kind of
I
getting
don't
away from the physics side of things?
um a little bit. I wouldn't say um so my degree is in physics, but all of my research was in astronomy. And so I think, you know, observing on one of the most expensive, biggest telescopes in the whole world is super cool and fun experience. Um, but I guess it is a little more difficult to understand the practical applications of any astronomy research. I mean, there are, but it is very, very sort of lofty. I feel like making this company that helps people every single day is going to be, very impactful to many people just right now. Um, if that
Absolutely.
makes
And there's a
sense.
market for it.
I hope.
Okay, Bill. Kind of a related question to my last one, but what is something that you're working to improve on yourself today?
Yeah, so I think I mean one of my biggest weaknesses is probably writing. Just like writing an email stresses me out to no end. Just uh writing emails to our 3,000 people on an email list, writing the text that goes on the website. I'm just not very good at that. Um and so that is something that I want to work on, want to get better at.
Okay, fantastic. And one more kind of fun question before we bring this in for a landing. What is something that you think people misunderstand about you the first time they meet you?
Um I think not very many people understand the whole PhD thing. They I think that they're worried that I'm just going to be some sort of hermit isolated in my room all the time, which I guess, since the pandemic that's kind of true, but just like unable to function in society up in some ivory tower kind of thing. I don't think that it's really like, you spent 5 years working on a project that may just fail completely, and you had to be dedicated for that long. And I think there's actually a lot of parallels to a startup, that it's just such long work, and then by the time it ends, it kind of doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a giant cliff anymore. Just so you're just sort of rolling it on out, right?
Mhm.
That like I think I still think some people believe that it's like 7 years of classes. It's literally a big misconception I think people get. So just about grad school and getting a PhD and that stuff. I
Okay.
think that
I'm actually curious. What did you do your dissertation on?
uh, galactic outflows at redshift 2 galaxies. So these is about half the age of the current universe. And then I looked at basically when light gets emitted from like hydrogen, it's at one wavelength. And so if gas is being expelled from a galaxy, when you observe it, that wavelength will shift because of Doppler effect, right? So we'll look for this broadened Gaussian shape that's indicative of an outflow.
I love it. That's so cool. And
Thank you.
I apologize you had to go 7 years for that. I had a good friend I was playing Warcraft with when I started college. I then finished law school about the same time he was finishing his PhD in physics too.
Right. Yeah. It's rough.
Okay. Bill, this has been a fantastic interview. How do people find you? How do they reach out to you? Where are you guys at on social media, your website, and all of that?
Sure. Well, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So it would be Bill Freeman 44. If you have the profile link. And then for the company, all of our social media handles would be itspureskillgg. Obviously, the website is pureskill.gg. And so you can find all the links there. And if you're a Counter-Strike player, sign up, get better.
Beautiful. Now, as we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share or anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
Um, I think that pretty much that's good for me.
All right, then. Well, Dr. Bill, thank you so much for coming on today. This was fantastic. I really do appreciate this.
Thank you. I enjoyed it a lot.
Absolutely. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.